Hey y'all, Monk Joseph here with the Broken Buddha, continuing the Sages series today on Christmas Eve. Today we're going to talk about Siddhartha Gautama, aka what you know him as Buddha. Um, so we'll go ahead and just jump right into it. So each enlightenment path is very unique to each person's type of life, and it was Gautama Buddha himself who said there are 84,000 different types of paths to enlightenment to match the 84,000 different types of humans. This is important to note because I think a lot of people get misconstrued with Buddhism about two things. One, Gautama Buddha didn't want to be worshipped. He was trying to guide people down a path to so that they could find what he found, experience what he experienced. And it's commonly misconstrued that you're supposed to be kneeling and asking for things. The only thing that you're really supposed to do is take refuge, which is just an internal reassurance that what he experienced was real and true, and something that you can experience and will experience, which I can verify myself. We'll talk about that in a minute. Some things I'll say here are going to be controversial. Some will be complimentary. All right. So the other thing I wanted to say about the before we get started is that this is the enlightenment path of a prince, right? And not only more specifically that, because in modern times we can translate that. If you have not, he fulfilled every desire possible for 29 years, they say, before he went down this path of abandoning everything to find enlightenment. So unless you are a prince or someone who's been resource capable of fulfilling every desire you've ever had in your life, then walking off into society as a vagrant may not be the best choice for you. And there are a million different types of enlightenment paths that did spawn off of Gautama Buddhas, but that's what that is. That is somebody who has fulfilled every desire possible, realize it's not going to make them happy, realize it's all going to end one day, and trying to find out the more um, the more existential answers in life. I fulfilled a lot of desires, but not like that. And that's why, I didn't walk off into being a vagrant. Um, I'm not going to talk too much about the beginning, and that was all I'm going to say about the beginning of his life. He fulfilled every desire for 29 years as a coddled prince. And I would even say that when he did encounter sickness and death, it affected him in such a way more severe than normal human because of the coddling, to where it was like deep to the core, like the fear, terror, anxiety, and everything was just like way deeper because he was so coddled. It was like ripping off a band-aid way too late kind of thing. Um, yeah, so there's that. So going out of that, I'm going to start right where he leaves, and I'm going to say something controversial first. There is something to note about, because I want to point out the commonality of him being human. And when he saw his son and named it Ball and Chain, and said, "This is the thing that will keep me tethered." That trapped feeling is a feeling that I've heard. I don't have kids, but I've heard that's something that pretty much every man goes through. They have this like trapped feeling. Some are happy, but they do feel like a spiritual trappedness when they see their first child. So I've heard. So it's interesting to note that is like a common human thing that catalyzed him to walk away and leave. And I used to really look down on him for this, but you really don't. Like when you see humanity as a whole and what the stages are trying to help us accomplish, you kind of understand it's way bigger than that. So anyway, he embarked on his journey, and it's interesting to note that as much as people tried to paint him as one of the sages who came into all the information naturally, it did say that he studied with a lot of gurus. So a lot of this stuff, I mean, a lot, like I think a half dozen to a dozen. So he would have learned some of the techniques that were passed on through Tibetan Buddhism and wherever else it ended up. But he was trained. He did not naturally incur these things. So, and we'll get into that later. So anyway, so he did have training, and it's funny because when you follow the story, they're like, it's within your own mind to solve these things and see these things. It is not exterior. So I've seen versions of the story where gurus tell him what he realized after it all. So like the very first guru said something to him along the lines of that it's you must find it within your mind, and then he's like, "You're a dumb guru," and then like later on down the line, he has quotes out of his pantheon that are like or canon that are like it is all within your mind. Like he pretty much repeats what the first guru told him as if it were like his, and people are like, "Whoa!" And it's like, did anyone else hear this story from the beginning? Anyway, not the point. So there's that part. Um, yeah, under the Bodhi tree. Now let's talk about that. This is probably my favorite thing to discuss with people about Buddhism and Lord Buddha, Gautama Buddha. Um, Yeah. Oh, and first of all, let me address that. The word Lord is just a title. I have a landlord. I don't call him Lord so and so, but if I did, it's just like a title of position of superiority. It doesn't mean that you are changing messiahs. He's not your new Jesus if you say the word Lord Buddha or Lord Gautama. There's some actors that are named Lord, like Lord something, Lord this, you know. Don't let it bother you, but for some reason, if it's like someone who accomplished the stage stuff, you guys really freak out. Anyway, not the point. So let's get right into the enlightenment of Buddha. Um, Under the Bodhi tree. So okay, let me cover this. I experienced I'm a Dzogchen monk, so I went through my Sutra Tantra Dzogchen. I had the visions of Rigpa. I had to spend the rest of my life trying to master that in real time, awake, um, as clear headed as super clear headed. And if I don't, it's okay. You know, you're just gonna finish it when you die. It's not that big of a deal. It's like a precursor. The reason why this is important to say in this video, when Gautama Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, you would have the only way you can engage Rigpa like that would be at night. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it in daytime, but when you see cave yogis with their houses like enclosed in and darkened, that's why, because you need darkness to be able to actually see the reflection of your consciousness and or Samantabhadra. Um, what are the different names? Vajradhara, Gotazangpo, Vajrapani. When you see it, you need darkness. All right, so it's possible to attain realization in a night. And I'm kind of on the fence of this because I don't want to say that you can't attain full enlightenment in one night, because I've never tried to, from sundown to sunup, sit under a tree and in all the pains that would come along with the 8-hour meditation and sufferings and mental stuff. So I've never tried to attain enlightenment in one night. So I'm not going to say that it's not possible, but it's highly unlikely, because I am spending the rest of my life accomplishing this meditative task, going from realization to enlightenment. So he could have experienced realization. As humans, we need to accept the possibility that he did not know the difference between realization and enlightenment, because, it's known that we would lose that ability and that degree of inner reflection to an extent, that is known in, when you study ancient enlightenment culture, that something that we would have to refine. The other reason why I don't think that I do have my doubts that Gautama Buddha attained full enlightenment in his body. Obviously, if he had the realization visions, as soon as he died, it would have been like, he would have taken the time to go through the motions there, or it just would have happened instantaneously, as we're told it does. So, but I have my doubts because there are some things that don't make sense. When he created the Sangha, one, the fact that it was like a mockery of aristocracy kind of in itself seems like a weird jab for an enlightened being to take. And two, the purpose of the Sangha, they say, was to make the path easier. If Gautama Buddha was fully enlightened, he would know that making people's lives easier is not going to guide them to enlightenment. It's going to guide them more to ego and directly back here. I mean, by creating the Sangha, I would argue that everybody who went to the Sangha, except for the few who really got it, the very, very select few who got it, everybody who went to the Sangha probably came back here, according to what their own religion believes. Because even Gautama Buddha himself said, I can teach in short, I can teach in long, but teaching somebody who understands is rare. So he did that to make it, easier, but you can't make enlightenment easier. And one thing I've learned, trusting the all that is that can't be understood in my research as a yogi, you really can't do better than the manifestation. If you're trying to teach somebody enlightenment and then they disappear off into the void, and you guys don't talk, like, that's not a bad thing. You cannot do better than this existence at guiding somebody to enlightenment. You know what I'm saying? Or nobody would have ever been guided to enlightenment, especially the ones that don't have direct teachers of that. All right. So anyway, but yeah, he could have absolutely attained the realization in one night. Yeah. Anyway, and then moving forward, everybody knows the rest of the tales of the miracles, the first teaching of the 5 students, of the 5 ascetics, which again is interesting because he was an ascetic in that group, but he was the only one who was able to get rid of all his desire before he started that. So it's very interesting to point that out again, that we're talking about someone who's fulfilled desire's path and a prince's path, not a normal person. Joe Schmo goes to work every day, never fulfilled a real desire in his life. This might not be the path for you. But that's why they have monasteries and all kinds of other paths, Bon, Tibetan Buddhist. Those are the only 2 that I know of with that direct Dharma line. Zen and Chan, same thing. They have a different line and a different path. But yeah, I got all this from just tracking back the Shaolin Temple. This is where I ended up, was Dhammo, and then Buddha, and you got to figure out where it all correlates. And they're all trying to teach the same thing. They're trying to teach you how to see your own consciousness, a reflection of it, or the all that is that can't be understood. Um, yeah, because I mean, I see these things as what they are protecting, and then I see where humanity has completely, like, overbearingly went like, oh, they're different. I don't need to live like that because they were a special, different kind of being. And it's really funny that you guys like pedestal these beings, knock yourselves down, and eliminate your ability for enlightenment like that in like just one thought. It's really wild if you really think about that. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's everything for Gautama Buddha. One thing, because it is Christmas Eve, that I want to point out: the Tibetan Buddhists had records out of India, or was that Zhangjiang? Not the point. Either way, it would have came from the same place. The Tibetans have records. Tibetan Buddhists have records of how different types of beings are born, and they state they don't do it for Buddhism. They're saying it for Padmasambhava, but I have, I believe in the Bumpo theory that he's just one of one of two Bumpo sons that created Tibetan Buddhism or helped to create Tibetan Buddhism. Not the point, all right? Um, when a being manifests within itself miraculously, that being is the manifestation itself. So as we approach Christmas tomorrow, I want to point out that to the own um, testament of the Tibetan Buddhists, Yeshua appearing, everyone knows that Yeshua or Jesus is the being that appeared in this manifestation miraculously. Even Muslims have to believe that. They don't believe that it is God incarnate. They believe that it is just another prophet. But they do have to believe in the Immaculate Conception. So all these people understand of this thing, and there's a group, being the Tibetan Buddhists, that say, hey, if there's a miraculous birth, that birth is the existence itself. So it's very interesting to point that came out of Buddhism as we're approaching Christmas tomorrow. I'm a huge fan of Yeshua. I grew up, putting my feet in those steps, just how things are here in America. And it was a pretty ruthless group that I learned it with. So as you can see, I still have that like warrior, spiritual warrior kind of mentality. But yeah, that's it. I think that's the best I can offer everyone on Gautama Buddha, to relate him as a human being. Check out yesterday's video for Zarathustra, for Zoroastrianism. And then tomorrow will be Yeshua or Jesus in Christianity. But that's it for today. Siddhartha Gautama, aka Buddha. And this is what I know about Buddhism. And also, on a parting note, don't be dogmatic when studying Buddhism. Buddha means awakened one. The study of Buddhism is the study of your awakened one. Okay, so if you're studying anything that elevates or transcends your consciousness and ability to pay attention, you're studying that's Buddhism. You're practicing, that's practicing Buddhism if you're encouraging yourself in those ways. So don't, and like I said, you're not supposed to be like, you're not supposed to be kneeling. And if you are kneeling in front of Gautama Buddha, it's just to reassure that he had his visions and attained enlightenment, and that, okay, I get it. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's different when you're in my position and your position and somebody past mine's position or paralleled next to, whatever. Everybody's going to see these things differently. So I can't control how people see these things with their karmic traces. I can only teach you what karmic traces are. All right. And again, that's part of Buddha. And also, this plays into, so again, because tomorrow is Christmas, Yeshua, or Jesus, if you will, said, I am the way, the light, the truth. Dharma, which is what Buddha teaches and preaches, means truth in Sanskrit. And this happened 500 years before Yeshua. See, it's fun to point out in with the upcoming holiday that he was talking to the people who identified these things as God, to try to get them to understand that he was the thing that miraculously incarnated within itself, himself. All right? Itself. All right, so there you have it. I'm a huge fan of Gautama Buddha, guys. Don't get that wrong. I am taking nothing away from this guy. This guy came, had everything and gave it away just to understand suffering. It doesn't matter if he did it selfishly, he did it right. Our desires are causing the suffering themselves. And the desires are caused by indoctrination of other people's desires. You don't even know what you desire because you're too busy trying to fulfill something that somebody else told you would make you seem smart or strong. It's not true. It's not real. All right. So yeah, if you have any questions, leave in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for stopping by the Broken Buddha.